9th Future of Education Summit took place this year on July 5th in Johannesburg. Under the theme Upskilling, Accelerating Relevance in Sub-Saharan Africa, one of the main discussion points was bridging the gap between education and employment. Panelists from all over the world came together to talk through different reasons behind the high unemployment rates in African countries. To kickstart the event, Dr. Rakesh Wahi, founder of FOE and co-founder of the ABN Group, delivered an insightful introductory address.
Owing to a very difficult history of colonization, the African education landscape is unique in its evolution. And while the need for education is at the forefront of all countries, for African nations, the challenges are significantly different as the region still lags the world in development. As a very basic example, the most essential tool for studies and academic research today is access to reasonably priced internet. Africa today has only 22% internet access as compared to a global average of 63%. Furthermore, broadband access in Africa comes at a very high cost. In terms of affordable pricing, India ranks number 1 in the world today with the cost of data at about 9 cents per gigabyte. In comparison, South Africa at $2 per gigabyte is 20 times higher in price than India.
Almost 3 decades after the apartheid system ended, South Africa still grapples with its consequences. The country remains one of the most unequal in the world, with not every student having the same access to electronic information and communications technology. The issue of inequality was discussed further in the keynote address by Professor Chilitsi Mervala, the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations.
We also live at a time where technology is changing absolutely everything around us. And in these times of great changes, it is important that we leave no one behind, that we work hard to ensure that irrespective of where a person comes from, which nation a person belongs to, they actually have basic needs they need to function as a global citizen.
Sub-Saharan Africa was the workshop that they participated in was very sobering, actually, because the workshops sought to identify what we call moonshots, so really transformational goals to redefine education. The moonshot that emerged in the Sub-Saharan African one was really sobering, because for them a moonshot was universal access to good quality education. And in the previous 2 workshops, it wasn't a moonshot because it was reality, effectively. And so that was really very, very, I think, telling that in Sub-Saharan Africa there are much bigger problems that need to be addressed.
A pressing crisis Africa faces is not enough jobs for workers. On the other hand, there are jobs available that require skills many workers don't have. Reskilling and upskilling employees to meet industry demands was discussed in the summit's first panel, moderated by Fifi Peters, CNBC Africa's senior anchor.
One of the ways in which we are addressing it at Lancaster University, Ghana, is actually through working with industry. And this is my mantra, it has to be collaboration. For far too long, what we've had is a process that has had artificial lines of demarcation. We've had mainstream education as preparing children for mainstream education to complete all of their assessment criteria. They then go into tertiary education and we prepare students to complete our assessment criteria. And then we hand them over to industry. And as a result of that, they are going into industry with these skills gaps. They're not being fully prepared. And we need to move away from this compartmentalization process. It's almost as if when a child starts school at the age of 5, nobody realizes that 15, 16 years later, they are going to be entering the workforce. So what we need to do is we need to have a joined up process. We need to have this joined up way of thinking and appreciate that the primary function of education is to prepare the workforce of the future.
The biggest challenge is that in our system, we specialize very early. Many of the kids, when they come to varsity, they are 16, 17. Some don't even know what they want to study. I remember when I was a student, a friend followed us around and said, James, what are you studying? We said law. He said, oh, I'm also going to study law. Because many of our kids are first generation to come to university. They have no clue what is happening. And that can also play an important role. After 3 years, one can say, this is not what I want to do. But to answer the question asked earlier, we need flexibility in the higher education sector, which we don't have, We need to be agile enough, to respond to the changing circumstances quickly. Frankly, we are training students, kids here for jobs that may not exist. And if they specialize too soon, they may not be relevant in the labor market.
There is a huge number of graduate students that are unemployable, unfortunately, because they lack the skills, and that create like this white mismatch that you talked about initially. In that sense, it's very it's a pity, because the public resources in Africa are scarce and expensive, and we have to talk also about the policy and the way governments are allocating resources in the African context. If we are creating the illusion of being educated, meaning we are producing huge number of graduate students with, they spend long years studying at university, or like 12 years of curricula, and then they are with degrees that have really no market value locally or regionally, or not to say at the global level.
Why is it that the portfolio of South African universities, the academic portfolio, the things we teach in universities, is very similar to what we teach in the UK, in the US, and in many other parts of the world? But in South Africa, we have young people, unemployment rate is anything between 50 and 60%. And in the place like UK, it's about 5 or 6. What that suggests, that it's not simply about academic portfolio. I think that that's important, but it's about the absorptive capacity of the economy. It's about the fact that companies are not growing. It's about the fact that there are power problems in South Africa. It's about infrastructure collapsing. It's frankly about the incompetence of government by not creating an enabling environment. And I think in South Africa, we're ducking that question.
While governments can do more to increase jobs, experts worry that the African youth isn't prepared to tackle the rapidly changing job market. Professor Harleen Hayne, Vice-Chancellor of Curtin University, discussed methods to tackle this problem in her one-on-one interview with CNBC Africa's Head of Content Studio, Jill de Villiers.
I think it's important first to start with the huge increase in qualifications that are currently required to meet the needs of the industries of the 21st century. So, right now, I think by 2027, only 3% of the jobs will be able to be held by people who hold no qualifications. And by the same token, 75% of all of the new jobs by 2027 will probably require a bachelor's degree or more. So the requirement for people to get skills is moving at an exponential rate. So for us at Curtin, we've tried to address this huge need for upskilling and reskilling by making sure that our students are embedded in industry throughout their degree. So for us, the two ways that we can make sure that students are fit for the future is to make sure that we work with industry in developing our curriculum, and that our students also have internships and work placements while they're studying.
With rapidly changing technologies that are heavily influencing the job market, education institutes need to teach students skills required to succeed. Godfrey Matizwa, CNBC Africa's editor-in-chief, posed questions on aligning academia with industry needs to his panelists.
I think the first thing is business and academia needs to come closer together in developing the curriculum. Right. And this is not a once-off thing. This is like a regular thing to understand how business is evolving. And that is missing where, the academics go and research, and it's desktop research, and you do multiple forms of research. But I think we need to, when it comes to actually understanding what business requires, you have to be with business. And you have to talk to business leaders to understand that. So we see academics, graduates coming out, they memorize things rather than actually understanding the practicality. They're not able to connect the whole dots because everybody learns things in silos in one particular category. But no matter what category you choose, you have to have a way of teaching people how do you connect the whole picture. So because business is a puzzle, we're building a puzzle every day, and everybody, puts a piece of the puzzle, but we're not connecting the dots, not connecting the puzzle.
One of the key things that I've seen change in higher education in the last 20 years, which is the number of internships, and as a recognised part of the degree, the student actually coming in doing part of their work within the workplace. And I think more of that's going to happen for a whole range of reasons. And in North America, there's some very good examples of what they call cooperative degrees, where students can actually team and ladle the amount of time they spend in industry and the amount of time they spend within the academic institution.
Some panelists in this discussion were also of the opinion that a traditional university degree was not the only route to success in the workplace.
We talk about the universities as being the medium through which you prepare people for the workplace. And in Australia, I saw an interesting argument here. We've been pushing people through universities, trying to build numbers in universities. They're growing. We've got record numbers of students here. And now someone's come back and said, are these people that we've pushed through university and we encouraged really, was that the right pathway for it? It's like university is, everyone has to do it. But in fact, there are some very high performing people in workplaces who have never stepped foot in a university.
Yes, a lot has changed. And unfortunately, much of the basic structure of education, the 12 years of primary or schooling and then 4 + 4, etc., is not necessarily as relevant today as it was a few decades ago. So yes, I think the structure of education, where education is conveyed in the classroom, in a training school, in a skills development area, within business itself, in face-to-face, digitally. So given the extensive changes that have taken place technologically and in society and the way we do and convey things, yes, I totally agree with Gary's point that it's not necessary to have everybody go through university, etc. And there are many ways of achieving that goal.
For students who choose to attend university, employers are noticing a huge skills gap in what they are taught versus what the industry requires. Taking action to halt the widening skills gap was discussed in the next panel, moderated by CNBC anchor Tanya Habimana.
To ensure that our students and our workers are not left behind. Work will be available, jobs will be available, but because skills are not matching jobs that are present, then they will be unemployed. This calls for concerted efforts between government, trade unions, training institutions, and the industry to work together to make sure that all the students that are getting training are getting relevant training. We have a very good example in Germany. They have a dual system education where the industry is heavily involved in the training of products to ensure that then when they are done with the education in the tertiary institutions, they are ready for the world of work.
The governments have failed a lot in terms of education, and I think they will fail again to prepare the next generation or this current generation for anything. And I think that if the main benefactor for all these upskills and all this thing is industry and companies, why is it the burden of governments in the first place, or the burden of parents to pay for the education? Where is the industry when it comes to the money for this, for those employees that they say they want? And I think that's not really being looked at. They're the main beneficiary, and of course the person who's working is the beneficiary to get a salary, but the real value is in the company level. That's where the value creation is. But they're not willing to, get involved in the education very much.
Along with education institutes, companies, and governments providing the right skill set, students also need to be curious and adaptable.
it is really important that we raise our children, and the schools help us in that, with developing a sense of curiosity and a growth mindset. Because as they go forward into the future, they are going to have to deal with very rapid change, and they are going to have to be able to learn on their own. There will not be time for them to go back to a university and spend another 3 years getting a degree in whatever is new in the fourth industrial revolution. And universities, unless they're the ones who develop the technology, are usually 5 to 10 years behind the leading edge anyway. So we have to develop in our young people a passion for learning and give them the skill set so that they can research on their own, determine what is credible and what is not credible, and then know how to apply that.
I definitely believe that education has been turned totally upside down. Educational institutions concentrated on essay writing, on answering multiple choice questions. This form of assessment is dead. I like to confirm or second what my previous speaker said. It's all about applied learning, applied project, in stimulating curiosity in people. I think it was Bill Gates who said if he looks for a trait when he recruits people, is curiosity. The modern learner needs to be curious. The modern learner also needs, therefore, to enjoy learning. So I think the model is changing from a top-down approach where institutions pride themselves of excluding a lot of people, institution determining curriculum, institution saying you need to learn that, to what I believe is a much more bottom-up approach of learning, where ultimately learning resides in the individual. They have access to information instantaneously, and therefore they can pull it all together. In our own organization at iFundi, we're doing that right now. We're teaching everybody the new AI tools. But when I say teaching, we're not telling them what they do. We're not telling them how to use them. We're putting the question out there, what day-to-day problems do you face at work? And now let's look at the available tools, how they could help you solve the problem. And then our learners report back to us and say, this is how we have done it. This is how the tool can work for you.
Recruiters, industry, and academia collaborating on creating the jobs of the future was a main discussion point in another panel moderated by Fifi Peters.
We can't do things in isolation, because I go back to the fact that schools were established to have people being fed into the workplace. But if we're not following what the workplace needs, then those schools are a waste of time, because we're going to have people coming out of those schools and not having the skills to go into that market. And unless that conversation, and we got to get past the ego of who's in charge and who's not in charge and who's making the decisions. We got to actually say, take that right out of here. Okay, can we just, whether you're in private or in government, let's invite everyone to the table. And let's actually get the people who are thinking out of the box to come up with something that can change. This idea that a curriculum is put in and it's got to last for the next 20 years now is just so out of the way. With technology moving so fast, we've got to be adaptable. We've got to say, for the next 3 years, this is the curriculum. This is what we're concentrating on. But in 3 years' time, we're going to have another Bosporat and we're going to relook at that, because is it still, giving us what we need for our children in this fast-paced world?
Along with preparing students for the job market, some speakers felt that making them multifaceted individuals was also crucial.
We develop our youngsters from a holistic perspective. Okay. So yes, we are a software development firm, so they have to know how to program, but it's not only about that, we're also a consulting firm. So we teach them how to collaborate, we teach them how to engage. We show them how to communicate with a business person who's not a technical person, but to explain a technical problem and a solution. So, and it's all of those soft skills that have become really, really important. And also what I'm finding is that by part of being, as part of a project team with different levels of capability within the team, the youngsters are developing resilience. you know, the workplace is changing. They have to be resilient. They have to be adaptable. So we are coaching them through all of that, so that at the end of their graduate year, they look back and they say, wow, not only am I a better software developer, but I'm a more well-rounded individual.
I want to firstly add on to what my colleague was just talking about, is the need to continuously upskill, especially the soft skills. Sure. You know, the communication skills, the leadership skills, that they will always be evolving roles and description in terms of jobs, but also how do we ensure that they have the necessary soft skills that we can capacitate for any working environment or any adaptations into environment, but also again looking at the landscape of where we are. We cannot ignore the secondary folds that COVID had onto the well-being of students, and what we see right now, we're seeing, you know, significant themes of anxiety, and this again stems from the immediate change in which learning had to happen.
With the coming of advanced AI and ChatGPT, jobs are getting even more scarce.
Things that you can write, scripts, information, collating information, that's something that ChatGPT does much better than any of us could do. I mean just collating information. So there is a piece where if you're an excellent editor, there's still a job, but there's probably, like we said with accountants, there are less of them.
Oh, sure.
The question would be is for coders, if you asked me, so let's just think it through. We now have low code environments, and we have ChatGPT. If you ask ChatGPT to code, you can program ChatGPT to be a coach. For that, you need to ask it for the code. It gives you the code, you import it, and it becomes a coach. So I'm just giving you that as an example. Or you can ask it to write pieces of code, which it does, and does it really well. And you have low code environments together with that. So the question would be is, who will continue being coders? I think there's still a lot of work. But there's probably less work for the way we thought about it, the same as accountants. I think we'll still have accountants. They'll just do something very different to what they're doing today.
To support students in gaining relevant skills, Jill de Villiers had a one-on-one interview with another esteemed speaker.
Through our projects, the biggest one that we've got running across Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and Kenya at the moment, we've got partnerships set up where industry stakeholders and universities are required to work with one another to successfully deliver projects which support, you know, which supports the increased success rate of students at the end of the day. What we're looking to do through those projects is to build the capability of universities. So that universities can support, you know, the personal and professional development ambitions of young people. So if young people we want a situation where when young people have gone through the universities, they've got the skills, knowledge, expertise, and networks to be successful in whatever pathway they decide on, whether formal or informal. For that to happen at the scale that we need it to happen, then industry needs to be at the table, having conversations with university around what good looks like, what success looks like, what I guess the relevant curricula should look like, what engagement, you know, what the best kind of engagement to have within the classrooms to ensure that the students are successful.
In this fast-paced world, most current workers will be unable to go back to university to learn about new technologies. This could pose a problem for the future of work, as discussed by speakers in FOE's last panel.
There's a collaboration that we do at the University of KwaZulu-Natal to see what skills are needed, what gaps are there, and then design specific short courses to address that skills. Now, when you design the short courses ideally shouldn't be standalone. It should plug into something. So within the National Qualification Framework, a variety of short courses in an ensemble build up to a qualification. So when the organization is paying its skills development levy to the relevant SETA, there should ideally be a long-term plan on how the SME see itself in the future and how the upskilling and the short course development can take place, and how the different types of course attendance they can not only build to a certificate of completion, but also at the end can build up to a qualification. An accumulation of these short courses can even build up to eventually earning a master's and a PhD.
One of the key aspects, certainly of Curtin University, is that we have staff that are constantly moving between the university and between the industries here in Western Australia in particular, and in some of our other campuses, it's happening more as well. And the key point there is twofold. One is that by staff moving into industry, they are obviously able to bring their challenging approach to knowledge, their approach to thinking about things in a different way, and therefore bring the university into industry. But by actually working in industry as part of their careers and then coming back to the university, they are also able then to transform what we're doing by bringing that experience back with them.
If there is a talent which moves from the education to the industry, there is a gestation time when the talent becomes productive. So if that gap can be arrested, it's the direct profit which comes to the industry, because you are getting a talent which is prepared appropriately to match their requirements. And you will be surprised, at my university, I had put a full automobile assembly line by Suzuki Motors inside. And the timing is like, with the factory timings, it is matched. So the time at which the factory starts, at the same time the classes start. And the breaks which they have in the factory is the same time they get the breaks here. So it's an automobile assembly line.
Now, the reality is, in entrepreneurship, the truth is that the older you are, fundamentally, according to research in the States and in Australia, that the more successful you become as an entrepreneur, your startups are more likely to work because you've got a lot of learning in them. And that learning is hands-on learning. Henry Mintzberg, very famous professor, talks about his programs on management practice, which we do at Henley, by the way. So we capture people in mid-career and teach them skills so they can re-engage and build up qualifications around their ability to manage. And that management practice is a very hard thing to teach in a classroom, but you can teach it the way Mahendra was talking about. Now, when you put those things, that brilliant ideas, I love them. You put those things in your university, you're teaching people how to use things. They're interpreting knowledge. They're finding the limits of knowledge. They're learning to build their own theories, not be in sort of sacred submission and awe of the great professors, which you don't want them to be. You want them to be engaging, challenging thinking.
With insightful discussions and solutions, the contributors of this year's Future of Education Summit hope to bring positive change to support graduates and workers in building progressive careers.